Welcome, Lifeblood. This is George G, and the time is right. Welcome to today's guest, strong and powerful Jason Yormark. Jason, are you ready to do this?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Excited to have you on. Jason
Yeah.
is an agency owner of Socialistics. He's an author, a podcaster, a public speaker on all things marketing, social media, and entrepreneurship. His newest book is Anti-Agency, a Realistic Path to a $1 million business. Jason, tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've been a marketer all my life, kind of a path that I fell into. Kind of juggled between jobs quite a bit, but really took things off when I kind of headed out to Seattle and worked for Microsoft. That was really kind of the bridge to everything that I did. Spent a good 6 or 7 years there, doing search marketing, social media, and that's where my path really then carved out, was around social back in 2006 or 7, and got in on it early. Did social for Office for Mac, Microsoft Advertising, parlayed that into some agency gigs over the next 10 years, running social media teams. But I was always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. I always felt like a square peg in a round hole with the jobs. Just never felt right. But for me, my path to entrepreneurship took a little bit longer. It wasn't until my mid 40s that I figured it out and launched Socialistics, a social media agency that I own and run, and it's been incredible. It's been the right path. It's just felt right. Everything's worked out really well. To your point on the book, I've been able to kind of grow it into $1 million plus business, and then felt the need to tell that story because I did it differently. I just felt like a regular guy that, figured some things out and did some things a little bit differently. And I just felt this incredible freedom that I wanted others to experience. And I knew that there was other people out there that probably felt the same way about not feeling like being in a 9 to 5 type environment felt right, but maybe we're a little fearful of taking that leap. And that's really what the book's about, is just how to kind of bridge that gap and create that freedom for yourself. So my agency, I have an incredible team. It pretty much runs itself. So my real passion right now is getting this book out there and helping others and inspiring others to find their freedom through an entrepreneurial path.
I love it.
Yeah.
When I think about the internet and internet marketing and social media, I think complexity, I think confusing. What do you think?
Yeah, as it pertains to driving real results. Yeah, there's I think part of the challenges in being a marketer is there's a lot of pretenders out there. It's not difficult to achieve vanity metrics, likes, follows, those sorts of things. I mean, a lot of the younger generation have grown up with this, and getting people to like you or follow you is not a difficult thing. So there's a low barrier to that sort of thing. So what happens is you get a ton of people entering the marketing realm, if you will, attracting opportunities through this promise of, oh, we're going to grow your social media, we're going to grow it. And then perhaps they do, but then 6 months in or so, a customer or client will be asking themselves, well, why does this matter? Like, why does this matter to my business? And then that's where the rubber meets the road, because it's really about real results, customers, leads, sales, achieving social media success that relates to those sorts of metrics isn't easy. It takes quite a bit of experience to be able to do that sort of thing. And a certain percentage of agencies and professionals can do that. And that's where the complexity lies, because it is pretty sophisticated. It's not a very easy thing to do. There's a lot of moving parts around telling great stories and navigating paid media campaigns and running influencer campaigns. There's some complexity to it. So not everybody can do that. And the ones that can are the ones that are thriving.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with somebody who is a virtual CFO. They were talking about how there's a value metric of revenue, but what's really important is the actual profit, and that's what you're
Sure.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
clicks are cool, follows are cool, but are you making any money? Is that
Yeah.
actually resulting in something that's moving the needle for you? And
Mm-hmm.
all too often it's not.
Yeah, for sure. We just rolled out a new tagline that we call "Likes don't pay the bills." So we're pretty big on leading with that. No, we have clients that actually are looking to build a brand. Sometimes you'll get like a beverage like a beverage client that sells through retail. So selling online is not their ultimate goal. They need to build a community. They need to build awareness. So in those cases, obviously, social media metrics do play a bigger part in how they measure success. But the majority of the businesses that we work with need to be able to look at what they're investing in social media and be able to translate that to how is that impacting the business financially.
Is it knowable how many businesses that are in existence that are actively trying to succeed through social media marketing?
I mean, I don't know that I mean, most of them are. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's interesting because a lot of people don't, even business owners or decision makers, I would say more often than not, have a negative opinion about social media, and to some extent, justifiably so. I think we live in a world where there's definitely a lot of negative results that have come from the growth of social media and people, being making it a lot easier to share opinions or be destructive and those sorts of things. And just certainly going to anytime you have an open environment like that, those things are going to happen. But what I always tell clients is don't let your personal opinion of social media dictate your decisions around whether you leverage it for your business, because the truth of the matter is billions and billions of people are using it for extended periods of time. Those are where the eyeballs are, and regardless of whether you like it or not having your business leveraging those channels is a mistake, because that's where people are spending their time. And so it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you sell widgets. It doesn't matter if you're service based. It doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit. Whatever it is that you do, there are people out in the world that you're trying to get in front of that are on these channels. And a great example I use is like sometimes we'll have like a B2B client. They'll be like, well, my customers aren't going on Facebook to look for what I do. And I'll often say, well, no, they're not going there to look for you. But I can guarantee you that person that you're trying to reach is sitting on their couch watching TV with their second screen, casually scrolling through Facebook. And if you're doing things right and you're running strategic campaigns that are retargeting people that went to your website, that person that's scrolling is going to see your content. They're going to come across an ad and they were on your website, and then they're going to recognize you. And they're like, oh, that's right. I was on that website the other day. I was thinking about these guys. It's another touch point, right? And that's the aggregate of those touch points that ultimately lead to that person eventually doing the thing that you want them to do, which is pick up the phone or send in a form request or send an email. So it's that casual browsing. So that's where the magic really happens for a lot of complicated or complex businesses that maybe, aren't the sexiest brands in the world, that still can leverage those channels in a way that actually move the needle for them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And social media is not inherently good, nor is it bad. It just kind of is. So don't let your preconceived notions of it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tool. I mean, the good and the bad lies in the person. I always say social media isn't new. We've always been social. We've always shared stories. We've always communicated. It's the technology and the means with which how we do it is what changes. So yeah, it's a valuable tool if used correctly.
So how do you counsel clients to set expectations or think about, all right, great, here's the engagement. This is how we're going to move forward. This is the results we're going to try and get, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the first questions you always ask are, how do you define success? What does success look like to you? Imagine if you were to hire us or anybody for that matter, 6 months down the road, thinking to yourself, this is the best decision I've made. What would need to have had happened for you to feel that way? And so really it comes from that. How do you define success? Well, we want to drive X amount of leads, or we want to increase our revenue by X amount, whatever that thing is. And then you work backwards. Sometimes they'll have unrealistic expectations. They'll say, I want 1 million of these things, but my budget's $1,000 a month. Well, that's not going to happen. Right. So we say no more than we say yes. And if they have wildly unrealistic expectations, then that's not going to end well. But in many cases, we get to the right place in terms of mapping resources to realistic expectations. And then we always say, it's better to be great at less than average at everything. If you've got, X amount of resources, um, you know, it doesn't make sense to try to spread that out across too many channels or too many things. Let's focus on one or two channels that make more sense for you based on who that you're trying to target, and then build off of that. um, and then just being very clear about who it is that they're trying to target. Who's your target audience, who's that low hanging fruit. A lot of times business will say, well, we want to sell to everybody. Well, of course everybody would love that, but who's the real, you know knock it out of the park, they're going to love this thing. We really need to zero in on who that is, because that's going to help us determine how we tell those stories, how we target things, and whatnot. And then uh, and then ultimately, another big thing, and that really has nothing to do with your marketing, is your product or service, interesting, dynamic, different. If it's just a Me Too product, then we're not going to be able to do that much with that. Great marketing doesn't fix crappy products or services. You got to have a story. You've got to be doing something unique or different. You got to be doing something that people want or need. So we'll walk away from opportunities if it's just another thing. Somebody just launches another thing that's the same as everything else, or if they say, "Oh, what makes you different?" "Oh, we have better prices." No, that's not a differentiator. "Oh, we have great service." No, everybody says that. You got to have something that we can work with. So it's usually those sorts of things that really lead to a successful campaign. I always say, if you got a great product or service, people want it or need it, you're good people. And you have realistic expectations, success is a matter of when, not if.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So as the landscape continues to evolve and algorithms change and
Mhm.
new platforms come online, how hard is it to stay on top of everything
Mhm.
from your end?
For us, it's a challenge, but that's the job, right? Is to stay in front of those sorts of things. It's the value that a client or a customer should expect to have when working with an agency or a consultant. That's what they're paying for, is for them to stay ahead of the curve and to come to them with unique ideas or strategies before they blow up. You don't see, the rise of a channel is pretty rare. That doesn't happen too often. Really, where the changes happen are within the channels themselves. The technologies that they roll out, or the changes that they make. A perfect example is the iOS 14 update that came out about a year or so ago. That threw everything for a loop, because now it made it much more difficult to target people through social media. There's arguments on both ends of the spectrum about whether that was a good or a bad thing. I come from the school of thought of, look, we're always going to be advertised to, whether you like it or not. Fact of the matter is, you don't pay to use Facebook, you don't pay to use Instagram, and I think people would prefer it be that way. Well, they got to make money somehow, and that's through advertising. Would you rather have that advertising targeted to you? Would you rather be delivered ads that speak to you and the things that you like and are interested in, or would you rather that all be just generic, general stuff that is completely random? I'd prefer to have stuff that speaks to me. And I bought things because of that. I've been introduced to things that I didn't know existed. So I like it. Now, some people will argue, well, it's my privacy and I don't like them knowing these things. And look, I'm not going to, if that's the way you feel, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I just have the mindset of, you're going to be targeted. You're going to have to do a lot to not, have your information out there in some capacity. I'm okay with it, because I'd rather be targeted things that speak to me. So those are the things that kind of change, and we got to stay up. So I thought it was a good thing, because it made agencies even have to work harder, which created more of a separation between the pretenders and the real marketers that really know what they're doing. So it was a welcome change to us, because it helped separate us even further, because we had the smarts and the experience to be able to overcome that and do things to be able to still do those things. So that's part of the job, to stay ahead of the curve and make sure that the team is always self-educating.
How do I know if I'm a business owner and I'm evaluating or interviewing companies?
Mhm.
obviously they should come and talk to you. What are some questions that they should be asking to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly, you know, who have you worked with? Do you have clear case studies or results that you can share about work that you've done? How long you've been doing what you've been doing? Um, one, um, and you need to be able to kind of, if you're, so Clutch is a great tool, to kind of navigate agencies across all different types of service-based offerings. They actually often their gate for reviews is a little bit thicker, if you will. They call and they interview, so it's a little bit harder to game the system there. So that's a great way to kind of manage reputation in terms of whether an agency's got a good history of doing great work. Um, Part of it too is just I it's really about, do they walk the talk, right? I always think it's like, if you're a social media agency, like, what are they doing with their own stuff, right? That's a perfect reflection of what they can do for you. Often looking for those sorts of things. Do they have really great content? Like, have they made a commitment to putting out great, blog posts or a podcast or video content? Like, can you kind of get more insight into them? That's why I love podcasts, because I think you can really get some depth into what makes that agency or that professional tick. Anybody could kind of, when you look at a website, I mean, that's just window dressing. To really get the meat on the bone, it's like you can listen to a podcast or read their blog posts or watch videos. And that's a really great way to kind of get a sense of, how do these people operate? How do they think? How do they communicate? I think if you add those things up together, most people's instincts can lead them to a good decision about who they work with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now,
And it is always, it seems very reasonable to me that if I was to engage with the social media agency, I would want to look and see how that social media
yeah,
agency was engaging with social media.
sure,
Um,
absolutely. And you'd
and
be shocked at how many don't. I think it's a differentiator for us. So I think a lot of agencies just they choose. It's not easy. I mean, when you're really busy, the first thing to like forget about or is your own stuff. And I've just really tried to foster a culture of, no, we're a client. We're always going to treat ourselves that way. It cannot be, and it's been hard to get to that place, but we're finally there, and I think it makes a huge difference for us.
yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, the people are ready for that difference making tip. What do you have for
Yeah.
them?
Well, I'm going to just piggyback on that last question. Long story short, this came to me from being at a trade show a couple months ago. First one I was at since COVID. There's another agency there, and I knew of them, and they're really fake, and they just say anything that they need to say to get attention. So it was frustrating, right? And I had this epiphany about reputation, and so long story short, if you are if you own a business or you're looking to hire anybody service based, the best thing you can do to really know the true nature and culture of a business, go to Glassdoor, look up that company in Glassdoor, and see what the people that have worked there say about it, right? Because that is going to give you a real, true indication of what that company's like. You're getting insight from people that have been within those walls. Um, and then because you can game Google reviews and all these other places, you can game that system all day, every day. Glassdoor is a little bit different, right? So it's really, and the flip side, if you're an agency or a business, assuming that you've got a great culture and you treat your people well, make sure your Glassdoor profile is locked in. It can be a tremendous tool to helping you win business if you do that. We do that. I do that. I naturally care about my people. I take care of them. We have an impeccable track record. Our Glassdoor review reflects that. So I use that. I'm like, you want to really know what we're all about? Go look at Glassdoor. And then you know what they'll do? They'll go look at our competitors, and then they're going to see a significant difference, a tremendous way that most people either on the buying side aren't doing or the selling side aren't doing. That can be a big game changer in assessing who you hire and then also winning new business. So I definitely take a look at that, whether you're on either side of the spectrum.
Well, I think that is great stuff. That definitely gets, come on.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I haven't thought about Glassdoor for a couple of years, but
Yeah.
why not? That's the
Yeah.
best way to
It's a great
literally
tool.
see inside. So,
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? How can they engage? Where can they get a copy of Anti-Agency, A Realistic Path to a $1 million Business?
Sure. You can find us. Our name's easy to find. You just type that in, you'll find us, but socialistics.com. I also have a personal website, jasonyormark.com, where I go into a little bit more about entrepreneurship and how the path to that $1 million business. The book's available in both places. So you can find me at either one.
Love it. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Jason your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to socialistics.com, socialistics.com. Go to jasonyormark.com, Jason, JASONYORMARK.com, and pick up a copy of Anti-Agency. And if you are looking for conversation or interested in social media management, check out what they have to offer. Thanks again, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time, keep fighting the good fight. We are all in this together.